So one of the more frustrating parts of the debate yesterday was when they talked about Israel and what's happening in the Middle East right now. And, I mean, I got to be honest, Tim Walz's answer wasn't great on this either. The one part I liked from Walz is that he hit Donald Trump on ripping up the Iranian nuclear agreement, which was working. And now, of course, we're in a place that is much worse. And it's partially Trump's fault for ripping up that Iranian nuclear agreement. But the very first question of the debate, this was infuriating, was, would you support or be okay with a preemptive strike from Israel on Iran? What am I going to do with the media, man? What am I going to do with the media? It's total groupthink, embarrassing. I mean, the way when a bunch of Iranian missiles hit in Tel Aviv and hit some inanimate objects and an Air Force base, they were like, Dana Bash was nearly in tears. When 1,000 Lebanese get killed, barely a blip on the radar. When 48,000 Palestinians get killed, they have strategic conversations. Are we sure this is the right plan to move forward? So the humanity is just stripped from anybody who's Arab. But on the Israeli side, if you hit, some inanimate objects, they start crying and melting down. So a horrible question, especially because Israel already preemptively struck Iran. They bombed in Tehran and killed the top political wing Hamas official who was working on a ceasefire. Not a militant, political wing working on a ceasefire. They killed him. Gee, I wonder if Israel's interested in peace when you kill the top person negotiating with you and bombing in the capital city of Iran. Like they did already preemptively strike. But the question is, would you support a preemptive strike from Israel against Iran? And listen to J.D. Vance's answer.
Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother...
I have to pause to point out, Republicans spent the last few weeks shitting on Kamala Harris because at the beginning of her debate, she didn't answer the question and first went to, I'm from a middle class family. And it became a meme on the right to make fun of her for that. Like, oh, look at Kamala, she can't answer the question. She just goes right into her stump speech, right? That's exactly what J.D. Vance did here. Asked a direct question on the Middle East. Let me introduce myself. I'm from a working class family, bro. You did the same shit. And of course, he'll get a pass for it. By the way, if I was somebody who was a staffer on, any political campaign, I guarantee you my candidate would win. Why? Because I would make them directly answer every question that was asked of them. I don't think politicians realize how insufferable it is when you don't answer the question. Just give me a politician. It doesn't have to be the right answers. It just has to be direct answers. And people be like, oh, this is refreshing. I like that person. It drives me crazy that politicians never directly answer the question. You would be beloved if you just answered the question. All right, here we go.
My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
It's up to them, and we should support our allies, quote, fighting the bad guys. I don't want to hear a single fucking word about how this guy is different from other Republicans. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. The direct answer to the question is no, I wouldn't support that. He said, it's up to them. And also, we should support them in fighting the bad guys. So, the one that's literally in the midst of committing a genocide, not the bad guys. The one that bombed hospitals and schools and UN buildings and civilian infrastructure and wiped out like 70% of the buildings in Gaza, not the bad guys. The ones who are holding back food, fuel, water, and electricity from all of Gaza, not the bad guys. The ones who just bombed 3 power plants in Yemen and bombed the port of Hodeida in Yemen, where they get all of their goods, not the bad guys. I'm so fucking disgusted by this country's foreign policy. You know, you got Biden making all the wrong decisions, and the Republican reaction to Biden greenlighting everything Israel does is to say, you should greenlight even more of it. I mean, it's like there's no mainstream party that's like, we're just against like blowing up the entire Middle East and dragging us into another war and having horrific consequences that leave countless people maimed and killed. Nobody's saying it. Nobody's taking that position. Now, by the way, of course I have to address this. There was stability. You hear this argument all the time that like Donald Trump brought about stability because he was so unhinged that people didn't know what he was going to do, so it led to relative stability. That's not true. So, like I already pointed out, it was Trump who ripped up the Iranian nuclear agreement, which was working perfectly. If we had just stayed in that agreement, everything would be much more calm. Everything would be much more calm. It was Trump who gave a green light to recognizing the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, even though it's Syrian territory. It's Trump who did the Abraham Accords, which was a giant middle finger to Palestinians, which led to the October 7th attack. The whole point of the Abraham Accords was to say, screw you, Palestinians, we're going to work around you. Nobody's ever coming to save you. You're going to be occupied forever. And that led Hamas to say, oh, really? Watch this. And they did October 7th. It was Trump who increased drone strikes over 400% and kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan and bombed Syria and bombed Somalia and tried to coup Venezuela and killed a top Iranian general and armed Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide in Yemen and said he wants to bomb Mexico in his second term and says Biden isn't supporting Israel enough and, quote, letting them finish the job. He hired all these insane neocons. He signed a pro-torture executive order. No, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. You got to call a spade a spade. And he was completely and utterly unhinged, and it had horrendous consequences. Now, that's not me defending Biden and the Democrats because they've done an abysmal job, but let's stop pretending. Let's stop looking back through rose-colored glasses as if everything was fucking perfect and beautiful back then. No, he laid the groundwork, which helped lead us to where we are right now. And he doesn't want to take any accountability for it, which is very obvious. And now there's this revisionist history about how, oh, he kept everybody in check, bro. No, he did a lot of the policies that got us where we are right now. There's no doubt about that. And this is the answer you get as you have a giant regional war breaking out in the Middle East. We'll support Israel. It's up to them. It's up to them. But they're fighting the bad guys. So, in other words, we're fucked. That's the takeaway. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.